Yeah, I can hear you. I muted the recording so that we can talk on Spaces.
Yeah, awesome. It's a little bit of mixed media occasion where we do both the same link on Twitter Spaces for the stream. Let me just thanks for joining me, man. It's been, I'm sure it's a crazy week for you.
Yeah, it has been. Preparing the IDO, just a lot of stuff in the works. Our team is growing really, really fast, so a lot of stuff to handle.
Yeah, it's wild. I saw the latest post in the Discord.
Yeah,
and it's about all the team members are joining, all the stuff you've been up to. It just seems like a great way to get everything in order to really just make sure my mic's working. Yep. Okay. There we go. Awesome.
Wait, is it better to have the audio on here?
Yeah. Do you want to put the audio on the stream, and then we can turn audio down on Spaces?
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Cool.
How's that?
Looks good.
All right. I haven't got you yet on the audio. Can you hear me across the stream?
Yeah, clearly.
Let me just see.
How's the mic quality? Because this is on my MacBook, so I'm not sure.
All right, there we go. Should be good.
Great.
So, what, 3 days and counting to go?
Yeah. It's final stretch.
Yeah, totally. And you've been doing the rounds, working your butt off trying to get the word out there, which is kind of ironic because I've known about Honey for months now. Being part of the Solana ecosystem, you've really embedded yourself into that whole world, and got a whole bunch of great, fantastic projects on board. So I'm just so glad to have you for the short amount of time that you can give to chat to me. What I like to talk about in my channel, and I said to you this beforehand, is really kind of chat to the people who are new to the space or coming into the space, and try and make it a bit more accessible to them, so that it's not so intimidating, because it can be pretty overwhelming. I've certainly found it myself. I don't know how you found it when you came into crypto. So the idea is just to have a really casual conversation and get to know you a little bit, like what your history and background is, but mainly jump into Honey and give us the rundown before the IDO this week.
Yeah, sure. So we've been around for a while now. Our first farms launched in November, and that was with Rogue Sharks and Pesky Penguins. Since then, we've had like 70 partners, a little more than that. And so, yeah, it's been December, January. Those are like the big months for staking and staking as a service. And then we kind of went full throttle on lending and borrowing. So yeah, for those who don't know, Honey Finance, it's a platform that builds financial tools for NFTs. And that's really important when you think about kind of the creator economy and what assets are going to be used in Web3 in general, along with the Metaverse and everything else. And so the main kind of primitive that we want to focus on is being able to get a loan with your NFT as collateral. And that sounds really like simple, really trivial, but there's a lot of problems that come along with that. So the first one's like oracles. How do you price the NFTs? How do you liquidate the NFTs? And then there's other problems that are more related to game theory. So there's a lot of problems to solve, and we've been working on it since pretty much the month of August. And so rolling out kind of different features at different times. Yeah, I think that's why people know us for staking. It's because the first feature that we had to develop for lending and borrowing was actually people being able to deposit collateral on the platform. And that was really similar to staking. So when we saw staking kind of take off, late last year, we thought, oh, well, we kind of already have the code for this. Let's test it out. And that allowed us to kind of fuel our marketing. So yeah.
It came at a time where, a bunch of NFT projects were trying to figure out a staking solution. We kind of jumped in from the arts perspective, and then this the whole when utility question always comes up, and staking seems like a really great way to engage people into the platform. And so that's what I really saw when you launched that. Projects just flooded in and wanted to be a part of your staking solution, I guess. So it's like you found this kind of inherent demand in that feature, even beyond the lending and borrowing function that you were developing.
Yeah, that was like a little bit serendipitous, that the timing kind of worked out. And the reason that's been great also is because we have a lot of like great builders on the team, but we don't have anybody who's like necessarily marketing. In fact, we don't really do much marketing at all. So the reason that was great is because each of the projects that were going on actually kind of got to speak the gospel of Honey Finance, and we got to just focus on what was really important, which was the product. And that I think allowed us to move much faster than if we had been focused on kind of getting the word out in a traditional sense.
Why is it important? Why would you want to loan your NFT? Why would you want to borrow against it? Why is that whole problem a problem in the first place?
Yeah, so I think and we polled and we did a lot of kind of market research beforehand, obviously, and we found that it was the biggest problem was kind of illiquidity of NFTs. And we even tried to go like first principles: is it really a problem, and how big of a problem is it? And we saw that like the illiquidity of NFTs is just one of the biggest things that's holding it back, and the main reason is opportunity cost. So basically, when you're holding essentially these JPEGs, there's all these opportunities in crypto that you're not getting to participate in. My favorite, obviously, is DeFi and kind of DeFi yields that we can see, yield farming and everything else. But as well, you're also going to have IDOs or token sales, maybe NFT mints. Those are all opportunities that if your portfolio is illiquid, you're not actually getting to participate in. Whereas if you're able to use your NFT as collateral and then get liquidity from that NFT, you actually get to participate in those opportunities, but keep the NFT, right? So you're kind of taking a bet, just like you always are when you take an opportunity. But this time you don't have to sell the NFT. You can kind of have it depend on this bet. And so that was kind of the main reason, like the main problem that we thought we could tackle within NFTs. It's the really big problem that has a lot of moving pieces, but it's the one that we've been working on for the last couple months.
Yeah, because it seems ironic, this whole push to hodl culture, getting involved in a community and buying an NFT and investing in it in a big way. A lot of people putting a lot of money into them, to then try and flip and get rid of just because you see an opportunity to increase your pot. Kevin Rose was talking about it on his podcast recently, particularly in those situations where you're holding big, and it's kind of akin to these kind of big tech founders who are borrowing against their own assets in order to live, day to day. And now we're not saying people should borrow against the NFT to pay the bills or the rents, of course, but like it gives this really great solution, I guess. And that's why, look, I'm on board. It's incredible that it popped up on Solana because it's the chain I've spent most time on, the communities I've spent the most time in. What's like the most exciting thing for you? What's the thing that really fires you up and like pulls you through these massive hours that you're pulling while you're building the product?
Yeah, I think well, because we've been working these hours for like a long time, right? So I mentioned that we've been working on it since August, and it's just been nonstop, and now it's like late March. So the rhythm has been like very taxing. But the reason that we've just been able to hold, I think, is our team. The approach that we've taken is kind of building open source and allowing anybody to contribute to the project. And that's why we have so many people building it right now. And having this team of like over a dozen people that are just working in these task forces, working on different verticals of the project, different aspects of it. I think that that's just been an incredible environment to work in. And so it never really feels like work just because you're always changing, you're always tackling different problems. There's so many problems to tackle, as I said before, and each of them is incredibly interesting, incredibly different. One day you'll have an engineering problem, another day you'll have like an economic game theory problem. So it's very kind of diverse, and that's the amazing part of working on the project that has such a like broad scope. And so and then also kind of the potential for building out the infrastructure for Web3. Obviously, everybody that works on the project is a big believer that we should create an alternative financial system that relies on smart contracts that are open source, that are transparent, that don't allow for some of the things that we've seen in traditional finance. So I think also kind of keeping that in mind of like how important our mission is, I think is what has also really kept us going. I'd say that we are very mission driven in what we do, and I try to remind our team as much as possible. This is kind of the significance of why we're building these financial systems. And everybody on the team really identifies with that, and I think it keeps them going.
Where does that come from for you? Why are you driven to build
Well,
this thing? What's your genesis story?
I mean, I don't know like about Genesis story, but I think a lot of the builders in DeFi um, keep in mind, what happened in 2008. I think that was kind of a big event for a lot of people building these new financial alternatives. And just the idea that we can create smart contracts, algorithms basically to run our financial systems instead of opening it up to criminal, almost like psychopathic behavior that we've seen in the past. And so a lot of people were affected by that. I was lucky enough to not be as affected by it, and I was quite young at the time, but yeah. And so that's been a huge source of motivation in the space, and I think why you see so many people building it open source, even if it might be more difficult to profit from it as an individual. I think they really understand the importance of building it open source and building it transparently.
We'll talk a bit about the big ticket with particular item, which is the IDO this week. But I just want to drill down a little bit more into that concept of peer to contract. That's at the heart of the lending and borrowing functionality of Honey DeFi, taking a step on from that decentralized finance ideals. And can you briefly talk about it without getting into too much technical depth about how that serves to empower the individual and bring kind of security and trustlessness to the platform?
Yeah, the original thesis was a little bit historical. I think when you see new financial systems arise, it always kind of starts with peer-to-peer trading, and then it evolves into more sophisticated financial systems. So we saw it just throughout history in European history as well, and we kind of saw it with fungible tokens. So the first big platform, I don't think most people remember, but it was ETHLend, and ETHLend was peer-to-peer, basically borrowing ETH, and having ETH as collateral. And so that was by Stani Kulachov of Aave, and then it turned into Aave. And the real revolution that happened when ETHLend turned into Aave is that you had peer-to-peer lending, which was kind of inefficient, high friction, terrible rates. And that turned into just this peer-to-contract approach that was instant loans, much more efficient, much lower rates, and that was really it served a much broader market. And so when we kind of entered into NFTs last year, we thought like I had this in mind of Stani's story through ETHLend and then Aave, and the only financial systems that existed around NFTs were all peer to peer. And so the big challenge for our team was okay, so we know that there's going to be kind of this evolution from peer to peer towards something a little bit more structured. So how do we make that happen? Like, what are the hurdles that we have to overcome? What are the obstacles? We identified them. The two big ones were the liquidations and the Oracle, and then we just tried to, from first principles, decide how can we really tackle these issues. And so for me, Honey is kind of a continuation of peer to peer turns into something more structured, more accessible, and that means peer to contract. And what peer to contract really means, and what Aave did when they moved away from peer to peer, was saying, let's pool all the money from lenders and then have a really simple economic concept called utilization rate. Based off of how much of the supply is being used, that'll determine the interest rate. And then anybody can borrow from this pool of liquidity. And so doing the same thing with NFTs is a really important step towards building proper financial infrastructure and moving away from peer to peer.
The I guess this is all just in service of getting to that end of, I guess, opening up this space to new users and, more people embracing DeFi in a big way. And I come from a creative background to NFTs, so I'm interested initially in the art, but also how to make a living and and I guess interact in this space. And this whole concept actually of digital twin that I go under is about creating, our virtual selves on top of our real world. And by creating essentially this platform, you've been able to, I guess, take away or I guess challenge the TradFi model of that centralized institution that only takes a certain type of collateral, despite you possibly owning a whole bunch of different assets in a variety of different areas. That's what's so fascinating for me. But let's talk about the IDO. Let's talk about the big thing this week. There's a lot of hype behind it. I think like Solana's turned around for you, so that there's a bit more bullishness in the air as you go into this week. Did you have anything to do with that by any chance, or?
I highly doubt it. But yeah, I think it helps. In the long run, I don't know if how important it is in terms of like, okay, so Solana went up like 20% last week or something like that. How much is that going to help us in the long run? Well, like I'll take it. I hope that that's kind of the luck that we get to receive. But we'll make do, whatever happens.
Yeah, I'm being a bit flippant because, I mean, just even recently you've introduced, there was a vote around staking your Bs and increasing the return over a number of years. Like, can you talk to me about the IDO itself, what it's setting out to achieve, how people can participate, just get some nuts and bolts, and then let's go deeper into, I guess, what it means for long term and what you're building with this IDO.
Yeah, so the IDO tries to kind of have the same values as the project, and so that's just creating something as fair as possible and as accessible as possible. So props to Mango Markets and all the other IDOs that came before who used an auctioning system. I think that's a great way to give an initial value. For those who don't know, basically, there's a 24-hour period of time where people get to deposit USDC. So they say, I want to be exposed by a factor of $300 or $500 or however much they want. And then they receive the tokens depending on how many people have deposited USDC at the end of the 24 hours. And that's great because now you don't have botting, you don't have kind of first come, first serve. And those were huge issues for like a number of months around IDOs. And so here, what's great is everybody gets to buy the token at the same price. And because we haven't gone the VC route, or we don't have any angel investors or advisors, anybody who buys the IDO, they'll be purchasing the token kind of at the cheapest price that it's ever been sold at. And so that was really important to us. And then the IDO in general, kind of more long term, it allows us to, and I talked about this in a recent blog post, but it allows us to kind of pivot from being an NFT protocol to being a true DeFi protocol. We build financial tools for NFTs, but a lot of that requires incentives. It requires just good tokenomics, to be honest, just like any true DeFi protocol. And we're really bullish on the fact that Honey Finance is going to get to benefit from the growth of the metaverse, of NFTs, of Web3. But then we kind of need a way for that to trickle down to our users. And that's kind of what we tried to build when we conceptualized the token. And I think the audio, we had an audio issue. Yeah, I can't hear you. It like broke off. Yeah. Yeah, it's still robotic, like a connection issue maybe, or I'm not sure if it's the same on my end, because I hear you just fine on the spaces. No,
It's never a
it works.
now we're back.
Yeah, we're back.
Okay, awesome. Okay, we're back. Thanks for your patience. I was saying IDOs are such a short-term thing. They bring a lot of attention to the project and everything. How do you extend the interest, and how do you engage people in the back end, as in at the supporter level of the project,
Mhm.
beyond the IPO? What is happening in a week's time? What is happening in a month's time? What do you see being the big things in Honey in 2 years' time, when a lot of those people who have staked their bees
Mhm.
uh, are expecting to wind up their kind of vesting period?
Yeah. So the kind of I'll take it in like a short term, medium term, and long term.
Yeah.
In the really short term, what's great is we're going to be able to test kind of what we've been building for months now. So the team is really excited to just ship code and to get that out of the way. So that would be lending and borrowing, the main features, which we already got to test with the community a couple weeks back. But now we get to implement the Oracle and the liquidations. We have seen a lot of progress in terms of Oracle reliability around NFTs, and that's thanks to projects like Tensor, who have just amazing development teams behind them, and who use great statistical models that I would love to talk about, but I don't think we'll have time. And so, in the short term, we get to implement all of that and test it with the community in the coming weeks, if not days. And so, then right after, we get to in the short to medium term, one of our big objectives and ambitions is kind of cross chain,
Mm,
because we hired some Solidity developers and who joined the team who've been working really hard for a couple of weeks now. And Solidity development is much faster than Rust development and Solana development. So I think we'll be seeing that actually kind of in the short term as well.
that's
Uh,
massive.
yeah, it's been really exciting to play around with, especially because we've been building it in Solidity, so that's like any EVM chain, Polygon, Ethereum, Phantom, Avalanche. Not all of those have like the right NFT ecosystems to deploy on, but some of them do, and that's what we can look forward to. We don't want to do everything at the same time, so again, it's not like an engineering thing. The engineering part is actually easier than it seems. It's more about how do we kind of navigate with the community through some of these ecosystems and try to uh, get the right feedback, do the proper testing that we need to do. So in the short term, those are the most exciting ones. In the medium term, I think metaverse integrations are going to be really powerful for Honey. I mean, we're starting to see just a lot of capital just kind of flow into the metaverse, and a lot of amazing games that have, they started maybe a year ago, a couple months back. That's when development started, and now we're going to enter a phase where these AAA games, are going to come out. And so once they come out with the proper assets with the right NFTs, we'll be able to integrate into them really seamlessly. And so we've kind of been working on that behind the
Whoa,
scenes as
whoa, whoa! Let me wait. This, because this seems kind of huge, right? When people's like stocking up on their P2E
well.
tokens or their characters, you're saying that they can then essentially use Honey uh, to lend, borrow
Yeah. Well, I
those.
mean,
What?
Most metaverse games have pretty commoditized NFTs, especially when they have land, right? So, or they have like houses or some kind of like housing. Those are pretty commoditized, and that means that it's quite easy for us to value. It's actually really easy to value, especially when it's land. And you can get a mortgage on that relatively easily, especially if it's built on top of networks like Polygon or Ethereum. And so when we go across chain, we become compatible with any metaverse game that has assets on those chains um, really easily through our platform, but maybe an even more seamless experience through their game. And so to me, that's where it becomes really exciting. Obviously, like we talk a lot about kind of JPEGs and how you can use your JPEG to like get yield, but in the long term, and I mean like in the really long term, I think JPEGs will end up being like less than 1% of what Honey actually trades. One, because we'll see financial derivatives that use NFTs, and two, because we'll have like real metaverse assets. And I think that those will be much bigger in terms of market share. So in the medium to long run, that's what's really that's what we're working on the most, is being able to support kind of the upcoming wave of the metaverse. We know that we're really, really early in terms of the development of the metaverse, but we also know that with the amount of capital that's flowing in and the amount of users that's going to be flowing in, it's really important that Honey like positions itself to be ready for that.
I'm just still digesting that. That seems like a huge concept, and I can't wait for the first iteration of that to make its way into our
Mhm.
hands so we can play around with it. I got in through play to earn, and I've stayed because of the the culture and the adrenaline of everything. So it'd be nice to look at how you guys are playing in that space.
Well, yeah,
Um,
a lot of use cases kind of depend on the metaverse as well. So if you have, for instance, you can, I mean, and if you want to relate this to like the real world, a lot of what we do is similar to pawning, right? Where you have just like real world assets that you want to get a loan on. That can be like a fixed duration loan, or it can be, a different interest rate. But when you're able to do that in the metaverse, because the metaverse wants to replicate things from the real world, it actually becomes much easier to pawn things and to basically have much more liquid assets than you would have in the real world. So one of the big things in the metaverse, for instance, is like concerts. You have these concerts with like Snoop Dogg or like big celebrities, and they all have tickets. In the real world, that ticket, you're not really able to do much with it until the date of the ticket, or there's like a resale value, but you don't actually benefit from the resale value unless you sell it. In the metaverse, you'll be able to basically collateralize that ticket. And then during the months leading up to the concert, you'll be able to use the value that you get from it. And so that's just like one example that I give a lot. But you can think about it with a whole range of applications of, when we start to really see use cases in the metaverse, we just have much more liquid assets that can be utilized through platforms like Honey. And so that's where the metaverse becomes actually like an interesting financial opportunity for a lot of people.
So you're doing like even the utility of these tokens. There's a lot of kind of gated
Mhm.
communities, servers, alpha groups, or I mean, all of a sudden they suddenly become much more liquid and possible to be transferred.
Yeah, and we saw people who were really early with like punks or bored apes, and that was like now they've made life-changing money, right? But they're not actually able to benefit from that for a lot of them if they only have one or two,
Mm.
because then they would have to sell those NFTs and they would realize the gain, but they would leave the community that has given them that financial opportunity. And so if you're able to collateralize it, then you can still kind of have like a foot in the door and keep like in that community because you still own the NFT, but you actually get to benefit from the financial upside that the community has offered. So I think that'll kind of be the first wave of users is those that have made a lot of money like in previous years. So through punks, through board apes, through any NFT that's gone up just significantly. And for a lot of people, like we see a board ape profile picture, we're like, oh, that person must be rich. But are they really? Unless they sell the NFT that has made them rich. So that is what I expect to be the first wave of users. And then we start to see more use cases in the metaverse.
Um, overall, thanks so much for taking the time in the middle of the day when you've got such a huge week. I want to let you get back to building and coordinating this ever rapidly growing team that you've got at Honey DeFi. But I want to kind of finish with a question about what your vision is for Web3, the metaverse. I was shocked that a lot of these things you're talking about are happening very quickly with Honey, but what does long term look like? And I'm talking like a 5-10 year horizon. We've already talked about, the prompt for DeFi, or the kind of seminal moment was 2008 financial crisis, and this realization that we don't have real control of our own assets and property. Take that leap forward into 2030 and beyond. What is it that you have in your mind that you feel is the vision that we're going to realize?
Yeah, so I mean, I touched upon some of it with like 2008 and how we really want to build just a much more like solid financial system that is kind of like fair in the sense that the good input is a good output without intermediation in the middle that like corrupts it, right? We want the process to be as transparent as possible. And so I think that we're going to start to see that um, on a much shorter time horizon than like 20 to 30 years. Even just the like traditional banks, they can't ignore an interest rate of like 20% on US dollar. They just won't be able to do that. And so very, very soon, I imagine that we're going to be moving to a decentralized system just because it's like so incentivized and so profitable. But what I do expect on kind of a 20, 30-year horizon is especially around NFTs that we're going to see them becoming more complex financial instruments, either to represent like structured products or underwriting of kind of more complex insurance contracts. I think that that'll be the main use case. And if you kind of look at like traditional finance, derivatives are worth just like a whole order of magnitude more than like the primitives that they serve, like stocks. And so I think we're going to see something really similar in DeFi. Whether those derivatives are going to be NFT focused or maybe something else, I don't know. But that's what I expect. And I think that today these derivatives are mostly traded by like funds. And I think that in the future, it'll be so accessible to users that they can actually have access to these more complex products, more profitable products. And hopefully, we can have the education that goes along with that to actually empower those users. So yeah, I think what we're focused on in the short term is education to make that long-term goal of more complex derivatives accessible.
Man, I've just loved your writing, the way you talk, the way you're engaged in this project, and also your grander vision. I can't wait to see how everything goes with your IDO this week. But ultimately, I'm just really thankful to spend time with you, and wish you all the best of luck for not only this week but also the years to come, because I'm on board. And I know there's a lot of people that are part of the Honey community that love the project and love what you guys are building.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for having me and thanks for supporting the project.
All right, Sam. See you
All right,
around.
see ya.